I guess you want to appeal to the masses, but you also want to show that this fuel can be as good, if not better, than the current stuff made from dinosaurs. And it's like, I guess the way you're doing it is you're going to the masses with the fuel. Like people, anyone can join a grassroots motorsport league, I'm guessing, or a championship if they have a racing license. They go through the proper stuff. But in terms of the fuel itself, like, so what is the basics of it, and like in a short way, like how does it work?
Right. So carbon neutral sustainable fuels. You may have heard the word efuel. That's one type of it. And then there's biosynthetic fuels. So e-fuels are made by capturing carbon from the atmosphere
Mm.
using carbon capture machines or using carbon captured from industry. So certain industrial processes will give off CO2 and that's captured and then reapplied to these fuels. Biosynthetic is made from waste feedstock. So all the bits of crops that we don't use for food gets obviously processed and it's made into ethanol and methanols, depending on the type of e-fuel or biosynthetic. Both types are then combined with hydrogen, which is captured from water through a process called electrolysis. Once you've got the hydrogen and the ethanol or methanol combined, again, I'm not a scientist, so the chemical side of it, I don't know the intricacies of, but once that's combined, you then have a hydrocarbon, which is basically what you would crack from crude oil.
Yeah.
So once you got to that point, you would then process it into your different octane levels of petrol, and the finished product is identical basically to what would previously dig out the ground in crude oil and process.
Mm.
So yeah, that is the simplest way I can sort of describe it. It is very there's a lot of intricacies into it. It's a lot more detailed in terms of the chemical reactions involved, but the two methods create the same endpoint. Speaking to Ben, the current products that P1 put out there are a mix of the two. So it's a blend of e-fuel and biosynthetic fuel. Solely because e-fuel is not a huge thing at the minute. Obviously, carbon capture is a relatively new technology, so that's scaling up, and that will increase, and not just for P1, but for all the manufacturers. That will increase, but at the minute, biosynthetic and e-fuels are mixed and blended into the final products. So what we'll be using is basically 97 octane blend of the two. But again, they're 100% fossil free. It's carbon capture from the atmosphere, either via plants or via carbon capture machines.
Mm. Yeah, it's amazing. Effectively, you're just taking a waste product that would have gone either into the sky or into the ground, and you're taking that and turning it into something that we can use to have fun and compete and enjoy, really. So it's an amazing way. It's fascinating to see that it's taken this long for us to go, right, what is the solution to crude oil running out? What is the solution to fossil fuels running out? And we've tried electric, and that's no better for the environment than having a classic car. So now this way is coming along.
Yeah, I think the surprising thing what I learned was the technology is really old. So
Mm.
this technology for electrolysing hydrogen and creating synthetic fuels has been around since the Second World War. Um, and it was done due to the Germans not trying to rely on Russian oil anymore, which is a hot topic again. So they needed to be independent of obviously all the other nations because they were against them in the Second World War. So they created a lot of this technology all the way back then. So the technology or the process isn't a new idea, but the necessity to use it is probably more important now, which
Mm.
is why a lot of companies have picked up on it and are investing a lot of money into it and are running with it. But again, as we spoke about, I'm demonstrating it in sort of a grassroots motorsport level, but it's big for wider society.
Yeah.
Because obviously the carbons either come out of the air through a carbon capture machine or come out of plants which have captured it to grow. It's not new carbon. It's not carbon from 6 million years ago, which had been locked in the ground. It's carbon which came out of the air 6 months ago or 6 weeks ago. So that's where the sustainability comes in. there's no new carbon going into the atmosphere from the tailpipe, but then it's coming back out of the atmosphere to be made back into the fuel. So
Mm.
it gives the option for a load of like society-wide benefits, not just reduced emissions, which is obviously what we'd focus on in sort of our interest, but it gives you the ability as a nation to have more energy independence, which again
Mm.
is a hot topic at the minute with the Ukraine war and all the issues that surrounded that for energy supply around Europe. You could, for example, take any area what's got renewables, so wind, solar, tidal, geothermal, anything where you can create renewable energy, and you could set up a plant. So, for example, in our country, we could go to the north coast of Scotland, stick a wind farm in the sea, bring that electricity back to the coast, build a plant there, capture the carbon either through a carbon capture machine or waste feedstocks, and create our own synthetic fuels using renewables, which we've got an abundance of wind up there. We've got hydrogen from the water next in the sea. All the ingredients are there to remove the necessity for crude oil producing companies to supply us with our energy. And on a global side, you could even look at a solar farm in the Sahara Desert, for example. It's got all the sun in the world, and it would create an abundance of green energy, but moving that green energy around is an issue. You can't just run a cable from the Sahara Desert back to Britain. It's just not feasible. The technology is not there. The cable conductivity is not there. But you could build a synthetic fuel plant next to the solar farm, translate that energy into a synthetic fuel, and then using current infrastructure, transport that around Europe. And you've moved the energy from the Sahara into Germany, France, Spain, England, etc., with no real negative effects because we're not then burning new fossil fuels and adding new carbon to the atmosphere. So it's not just from an automotive perspective. Synthetic fuels have got such a wide scope where they could benefit the population of the world. Really, it's not just so that people can go racing in the future.